Every cell in the body maintains an electrical charge. If you have an electrical problem, you have a fire. In the 1960s, we lost our ground. We insulated ourselves, cut ourselves off from the energetic connection with the earth. We have disrupted the electrical stability of the immune system. The body was always maintained, always grounded. I measure all these electrical charges on my body, and they can cause all kinds of havoc. If you look at the wild animals, there's none of these modern health disorders. In fact, cancer does not exist in the natural world. When you touch the earth, you are electrically connected with every other living thing on the planet. It's about being in tune with consciousness. We come from the earth, we live, eat, breathe, dance with the earth, and we go back to the earth. These named diseases show up because what we've done is we've stepped out of nature. There's only one real health disorder. Everything is electrical in our environment on one level or another. But anyhow, so the concept of grounding is to bring two objects together and equalize the electrical potential between them so there's no charge, no sparks. Like static electricity, you walk across the room, you build up a bunch of static electricity on your body, touch a doorknob, and there's a zap. So grounding, I mean, what you're doing there is you're grounding the body with the door or whatever the conductive thing that you're touching to get rid of the charge. Does that make sense? I mean, it's charge reduction, charge prevention. Charge doesn't exist in nature, in the wild.
Then the question emerges, what builds up charges? Where do charges come from?
Well, it's I was born in 1944. I'm 80 years old, so I was here before television. And but most of all, back in those days, we started to have we were always barefoot or we wore leather sole shoes. And leathers are what we call a semiconductor, meaning they electrons, you can ground something with a leather, but it's going to be a slower process. But anyhow, so grounding, what brought me to it was, I need to back up just a second here, but I spent 30 years in the communications industry. I grew up on a ranch in Montana, but everything in Montana was organic. Everything we ate, everything we did was organic. We didn't even know it until they told us it was organic, because we didn't go to the store except to get, 25 bags of flour or rice or beans or those kind of things. And then we had our own meat, our own eggs, own vegetables, own everything. So, but anyhow, so I come from a very different world, but back then everything was about prevention. And today, things have changed, but but the static electricity started in probably, well, the real story, it really started in 1960 because the first thing we did, we had rubber on the soles of work shoes and boots and things like that. But the only time we ever wore a shoe was um, when we were working in the field or doing something to protect our feet. But other than that, we were always barefoot. As a kid, you couldn't get shoes on us. And if you ever notice little kids, if they go outdoors, they want to go jump and splash in, puddle of water, or they want to they love to be barefoot and grounded and whatever. But nobody knows, nobody understands anything about grounding irrelevant to that. We invented the synthetic sole shoes, first of all. So when you are wearing a synthetic sole shoe and you're walking across a floor, or you just pick your foot up off the ground, then some of the electrons on the rubber or two dissimilar materials. The bottom of the shoe is synthetic rubber, let's say, and the floor is carpet or some other material. But it doesn't matter when you put them together and separate them, you create some of the electrons stay on the carpet or vice versa on the shoe, and then you build up a charge on your body.
Is that
Because
because the rubber is insulative? Because it's an
yes,
insulator, right? Like you hear this word insulation. So like rubber is insulation. So it sort of
yeah,
protects the transfer of energy from one thing to another. Is that correct?
yeah, it's just like an electrical wire. We put a rubber jacket or a polymer jacket around the wire, so when you touch it, you don't get electrocuted. So you're insulating, you're preventing the charge or maintaining the charge inside the wire.
But some would think that like protecting yourself from the earth in terms of some like charge transfer would probably be, somewhat of a beneficial thing. But you're suggesting that, yeah, with the rubber in place, it's actually doing us more harm than good.
Well, I grew up on a ranch in Montana, and when I was a kid, I was a cowboy, and that was a boy who sits on a horse. It's not that road that riding rodeo and going out there and having fun like the cowboys on TV. But so what you're doing out there is you're babysitting cows, and your job is, and I was like 10 years old, whatever it was, I don't even remember, but but your job is to look at the cattle, keep an eye on them, make sure they're happy, make sure they're healthy. You don't know that they're healthy. I mean, just make sure that if there's something wrong with one of them, they'll tell you. They'll be bawling or they'll be doing something or whatever, or you can tell by the look in their eye. So if so, you take that animal out of the herd, you put them in a holding pen, and then you go ride the pasture and find out what changed in the pasture because something changed somewhere. Otherwise, the cow would be healthy and happy. So you look at the water, make sure the water's clean, pristine, all that kind of stuff. You check the pasture, make sure there's no noxious weeds growing, and if so, you move, or if the grass is too short, then you move the cattle to a little different section where the grass is green, the water's clean, and then you have health. And as long as you keep your cattle healthy, then you can sell some of them off and make a living and buy groceries and have food in the winter and so on. So anyhow, I have this kind of built-in innate background of prevention. It's about if you're sick, what are you eating? What's eating you, mentally or physically? You're doing something other than you're out of the bounds of nature. And this takes me back a little bit further, but it's like in modern world, 60 years ago when we invented plastic, and this is what I've spent the last 27 years of my life working on, is we invented plastics in 1960, and then there's an exponential curve over the last 65 years of inflammation-related health disorders, autoimmune diseases. This is everything from autism to lupus to MS to cancer to all of these modern health disorders, what we call degenerative health disorders. They started in the 1960s and they've grown exponentially ever since and are still growing. Almost everybody somewhere, I mean, they have some kind of a health disorder because so you go back to the cattle, and this is where I come from, and this is my reference. But the cattle, in nature, if you look at the wild animals, the deer, the antelope, the elk, whatever, the raccoon, anything, there's no such thing as inflammation-related health disorder. There's no cardiovascular disease. There's no MS, lupus, autism. There's none of these modern health disorders. In fact, cancer does not exist in the natural world. Animals, on the other hand, who live indoors with their owners, 50% of them will die from cancer, just like the same rate as their owners. So what we're talking about here, something changed in our environment about 1960. Before then, we were always grounded. You didn't know you were grounded. You didn't think about getting grounded because you couldn't get ungrounded. You were living on the earth with the earth. You were out growing things or harvesting things or just all of this natural world that we lived in. But we were always, we always had health. I mean, health is a birthright. You're born with health, and it takes a lot of years to compromise your health and to compromise your immune system such that your body can't maintain health. And then all these modern health disorders show up. So the world, to a large degree, is went on, well, it's the air, it's the water, it's this, it's that, it's the modern food, it's all of these things combined because what we've done is we've stepped out of nature. But the number one thing that I accidentally started working on, and it was because I spent 30 years in the communications industry, where we had to ground everything to the earth, physically connected to the earth, so that we could maintain electrical stability, no noise, no sparks, no fire. It's really to prevent fire. And but in communications, like if you don't want any noise in your sound or your pictures, if you're like a cable television system or a broadcast station, you want everything to be clean and precise. You want your electrical stability, so everything can be clean and pristine. Okay. So, but anyhow, so that's the world I come from, and so I grew up learning about grounding as the rest of the world did. We didn't use grounding until we started putting up cable television systems primarily, because now we had wires going into every home and telephone wires going into every home. So you had to cut those wires and put in what we call a ground block. So if there was lightning or electricity would hit the lines, then it would travel down to the earth or vice versa, and not go into the house, because if it went into the house, it'd blow up a TV or start a fire, primarily start a fire. And so I come with this, I just evolved in this time in history when along came television, along came grounding, along came electronics, along came all of this modern world that we have today. And it all was built over the last 60 years or so. And it's mind bending. If you can imagine, a 10-year-old kid, age, 1954, looking at the world today, say, oh my God, what happened? You know, but it was gradual. And I got to play a part in a lot of it because I was one of the, original pioneers in the cable television industry and low power television and microwave, all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of fun, and computers. And I loved the computer industry when it came along because it was just totally awesome. But again, you had to have good, clean systems to prevent noise, to prevent interference, to prevent, had to have shielding, grounding. It's an art all by itself. And if you spend any time in a radio studio, you know that everything has to be nice and clean. And so, but anyhow, that's kind of a nutshell of all of this.
Inspired Soul, thank you so much to all of you that are subscribed to the channel. Just want to take a quick moment to thank you all. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. To all of you that haven't yet subscribed but are considering subscribing, please do take a moment. There's a button below that says subscribe. Please hit that button, hit the bell notification icon. As I'm saying the word subscribe, it's lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution, inviting you to click. Please do take a moment, hit subscribe. It helps with everything we're doing here, championing love, wisdom, positivity around the world. Thank you so much in advance for your love and support. And with that, back to Clint in today's episode. You started off, ranching as a cowboy as a young kid, and then you've gone into the telecommunications industry. But then from that point, and you spent like over 3 decades in there, and then but from that point, because I understand you're grounding wires, you're grounding charges to protect from electrical surges, like you said, lightning strikes and things like that.
Yep.
But then also, just the household appliances having a certain charge and there's more electricity, we're plugging things in. At what point was it, instead of grounding household appliances, the idea that human beings needing grounding, like when did you reach back into your childhood and realize, oh, I was actually grounded all the time? And this is kind of what adults probably need in today's day and age, given the amount of, what was going on there? Can you bring us into that? Was there a certain moment, or was there a few examples of certain things happening around you or other individuals, or what was happening there?
I retired when I was 50. And the reason I retired is because when I got involved in the television industry, it was new. And every day was like, whoa, there was something new and whatever. And then satellites and micro and all these things. And so it was very organic, and you grow with it. So you know a lot of things you take for granted. You don't think about them. You just know them. The rest of the world doesn't know, but there's no reason for them to know because they're not in the business. So, but anyhow, when I retired, I had a computer. This is back in the early 90s. I had a computer, and every time I would touch the computer, it wasn't grounded, and none of the computers were back then, in home anyway, home type. And but every time I would touch my computer, it would crash, and meaning the software would glitch up, and then I'd have to shut it down, bring it back up, and pray that it would work. And the reason I was doing this is because um, when I retired, I ended up in Sedona, Arizona. Beautiful place, and it's like living in a national park and all that good stuff, and very outdoors, very earthy. And but anyhow, I was got very bored after I retired, and I had been a huge collector of Western art. And in Sedona, there was about 30, 40 art galleries. So I started. I figured weaseled my way in to help them with some of their lighting because some of their lighting was terrible. And I ended up starting a little company called Best of Show, in which I was playing with electrical because I had retired and I was out of it. And but I knew all this, and so anyhow, I was able to put together. And it was just a hobby thing. It wasn't a business. It was, but so I started lighting art shows for art galleries, and I had to order special parts all the time from the lighting back companies, and they would. So I'd have to enter them with the computer, send them in, and they would send me back whatever. But anyhow, but the biggest problem I had was keeping the computer to work certain times of the year because of the static electricity in the room, and that's what caused all of these glitches and stuff in the old days. So, but anyhow, one day I recognized what it was, and I said, "Well, I'm just going to ground my computer." So I took a piece of copper tape and I laid it across the front of the desk in front of my keyboard and connected it to with a wire to an electrical ground rod. And then every time I would go to touch my computer, I would put my fingers on the tape and discharge my body, get the static electricity off my body. So then when I touched my computer, everything would work and no glitches. So that's first event. Second event was I went outdoors after that about an hour later, and I sat down on a bench, and I was in a tourist area down across a place called Tlaquepaque, which is across from where I was, and and they had these big tour buses that kept, they would come up and drop off the tourists, and then they would go through all the tourist things and eventually have lunch and leave, I guess. But anyhow, so one day after this one event, I went out there and I was sitting on a bench, and up pulls this big old tour bus, and then all of a sudden you see all the tourists getting off the bus in a single file row, and they all had big white Nike type tennis shoes, the athletic shoe. And I have no idea where it came from, except that I was working with static, reducing that static on my computer. And I knew it was from the environment, the carpets and all that stuff in that room. But anyhow, so I just asked myself, I wonder if there's a consequence to us humans no longer being naturally grounded. Now, nobody would even think about that in whenever this was, 1990, because you just wouldn't think about it, because that was the whole thing, to get a nice pair of Nike tennis shoes and all
All
the
the
creature
rage.
comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the rage and whatever. But I went back to, and it helped me. There was also an event. I was sitting on that bench and I looked up at a tree, and there was a power line in a tree, or tree growing into the power line. And I thought somebody's got to, trim that, whatever, because again, that'll ground out the power line. And so, so anyhow, I just uh, ran through my mind. So I went home that night and I grabbed a voltmeter and a static meter, and I made a 30-foot long ground cord, and I connected it to a ground rod. I stuck it in the earth, took it in the house, connected it to a meter, and then I would take the probe on the meter and walk around, and I'd measure all these electrical charges on my body, mostly static electricity, anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 volts of static charge, just walking across your living room floor when the air is very dry. If there's a lot of moisture, then you don't necessarily notice it. But but every season you go through all these areas where you have high static charges, and they can cause all kinds of havoc. I mean, that's why we have clean rooms there's electrically clean, meaning there's no static electricity, no noise, and so So I threw the wire and then I walked around the safest thing in the home was the refrigerator because it was at earth potential because I was measuring it against the earth. The refrigerator, the appliances, but if I went towards the TV set, it would go way up. These were the old, uh, not our modern TVs. They're a lot lower than they were back 30 years ago. But but anyhow, but lamps were the worst. Uh, a lamp in the corner. You're sitting down on the couch, and here's a lamp sitting next to you. Well, it's not grounded, and so it's putting out a huge electric field. And then the couch itself, every time you get up or down, you're creating static electricity up and down on it. It's like when you roll over in bed. Some nights you can actually lift your feet and see the static electricity. Um, but these are things that people don't think about. But with my background, I always thought about it. So it's second nature to me. But anyhow, so that night or later in that day, I went to the hardware. I don't know. I went up to my bedroom and checked. The electric fields were the highest in my bedroom because it was an upstairs bedroom. I mean, they were extremely high. They were like 5 times higher than they were downstairs. So I went to the hardware store and I bought myself a roll of 3-inch wide metal duct tape, so it was conductive. And I laid it across my bed. I took an alligator clip and clipped that 30-foot wire to that, and then threw the wire out the window, connected it to a ground rod, actually two ground rods, one for the meter, one for the tape. And then I would take the meter in my hand and go lay on the tape, and my body would go to zero, just like if I were standing outdoors barefoot on the earth. Well, I grew up that way, so there's something I didn't understand any of it. I just thought, wow, this is really crazy.
You
So,
were measuring it. Did
but
it feel any different?
during life, no, you don't measure, but we can put you on a biofeedback equipment and ground you, and you can see the discharge, and the skin resistance and so on.
Sorry, I interrupted. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Um, here's how I felt it. So I laid that tape across my bed, and I had the voltmeter in my hand, and I was measuring it against the earth, and I was at zero. And all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, it was morning, and I was like 53 years old, something like that. And again, lots of pain, lots of crazy health, uh, just cowboy pain, I guess. And anyhow, um, I woke up in the morning. I said, "What the hell is this?" She says, "I don't ever sleep. I have to take Advil. I have to take pain pills. I have to do something in order to go sleep. I have to keep the TV on to distract myself, so I can go to sleep."
Hmm.
And that's pretty much a routine, for me it was anyway. And so I thought, wow, this is wild. So I did it for a couple more nights. Same thing. As long as I was on that tape, I would fall asleep and I would sleep better. So then I had a couple of friends that I had met in Sedona, and I said, they were about my age. I said, you guys need to try this because there's not a lot to do, except entertain each other. So anyhow, I went over and did the same thing with one of my friends, and then the next day another one. And I asked him, just let me know what you're experiencing. And I just told him, I said, if you can't sleep, this is the greatest thing I've ever come across in my life. And so a couple, 3 days later, one guy called and he said, do you think this could have anything to do with arthritis? And I said, no, I don't think so. And he said, well, but my arthritis is come way down. And then all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. My own pain, had come way down. I didn't have to take the Advil to go to
Whoa.
sleep. Okay, and the third guy, he was just like baffled with all of it. But anyhow, so I kept playing with it and playing with it, and then all of a sudden, I realized that all my pain went away. My energy came up, and I was able to sleep. And so I thought, well, it has to be all these static electricity in our environments or the EMFs and all that kind of stuff. That's what I originally thought, because that's what I was always doing, shielding or grounding or getting rid of charge. And so that went on for a little bit. And then after a month or two, I said, this is real and other people experience the same thing and nobody knows about this. And I said, I've got to figure this out because I should have known about it. And so I went down to the University of Arizona, went through, you know, tried to get some information out of the libraries there to medical libraries, whatever. Why does grounding the body reduce pain? Unknown. Nobody was aware of this in the university or any of the docs or any of the research anyway. They all thought I was out of my mind. Take your shoes off and drain the pain. And so this went on for a while, and eventually, about 3 months later, I said, "Okay, I got to go. I got to go out to UCLA somewhere where they know what's going on, and find out what's causing this, or why, how come nobody knows about it, and how come it's not in the literature." And so I went out there, and I finally got away into working with the sleep lab out there because we're talking about sleep. And and there's a half a dozen kids in the class, or what, not the group that I was meeting with. And the professor, the big guy, came in. He said, "You expect us to believe that somebody's going to drive a nail in the ground, tie it around somebody's toe, and they're going to sleep better?" They said, "Get out of here. You are nuts." Anyhow, he said, but we were able to carry on a conversation and spent about an hour or so there. Told them what I was experiencing and what I had found. And I recognized early on they know nothing about the body electric, that the body is electric. And I was dumbfounded because everything is about 100 reasons why this, why that, and whatever.
What do
But
you mean? What do you mean by that? The body is electric. So there's a current going through our body at every given time. I can't help but
no,
reflect on, like, is it getting a bit Nikola Tesla? Like everything is frequency? Is that the kind of space we're moving into, or what do you mean by the
well,
body is electric? It carries a
well,
charge.
no, every cell in the body maintains an electrical charge. It's electrically energized, and it communicates and takes in nutrients by polarizing, repolarizing, depolarizing, and pushing things in and out of the cell. And then you have all of these group of cells that make up a particular organ. They end up with their own electrical um, melee or
Makeup.
whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you have the heart. Everything is electrical in and of itself, but yet it's all different. And electrons can't run freely in the body. There's dielectric everywhere, and so this is all channeled, very well controlled. But the way they pronounce you dead is when the brain waves stop. That means the electrical activity in your brain stops.
Of
Then you are
course.
dead. So
Yeah.
everything in the body is electrical first, chemical second. All life and all the benefits, whatever. But if you are not, if you're impeding or affecting your electrical stability, the electrical stability of the body.
It's
Well,
dysregulated.
yeah, it just becomes dysregulated, and you get all of these ungrounded, like an ungrounded computer. You're going to have these fluctuations, and you're going to have crashes, and you're going to have all these problems. Most of all, you're going to have fire. Okay.
Ah, fire. So what
Yeah.
does fire in your body look like?
Well, in 204, I had been working on this for 7, 8 years, something like that, and and we had done several studies by this time. I had researchers and docs and whatever trying to help me figure this all out and put it together. We had done a half a dozen studies. A lot of them were published. They were all published in peer-reviewed in papers and so on. And everybody just said, what is this? Nobody could really wrap their mind around it. But in 204, just 20 years ago, there was a front page Time magazine. There was the word inflammation, and it showed a body and some flames. And in the fine print, basically, it said, you do not have all of these modern health disorders and disease, that these named diseases. There's only one real health disorder, and that is inflammation, meaning the immune system is dysfunctioning, misfiring. The body is on fire. The body is oxidizing. I mean, first of all, you have to know how the immune system works. Let's say you have a pathogen, a white blood cell. The immune system sends a white blood cell over, and it wraps itself around the pathogen, like kind of like a jelly cell, and then it releases what they call reactive oxygen species. The word reactive means it's highly electrically charged. It's electrically charged high enough that it can rip an electron from a pathogen. And that's how the immune system destroys pathogens. And that's all perfect and that's all normal. The problem is, as when we lost our ground, when we lost contact with the earth, we lost our supply of primal antioxidant, which is free electrons from the earth. And we hadn't discussed that, but maybe somewhere down. But the main thing is when you lose contact with the earth, then your body loses this resource. It's kind of like an oxygen molecule. If there's no oxygen, you lose your oxygen. So anyhow, after the oxidative burst, the immune system just does what it does. And you've heard the term autoimmune disorder, autoimmune disease. So that means the immune system is automatically doing what it's supposed to be doing, but it's not unwinding properly. So when we started wearing rubber soled shoes, synthetic soled shoes in the 1960s, thereabouts, we lost our ground. We lost our ability to absorb, and for the body was always maintained, always grounded, always charged with earth energy or earth's a surface charge, which is based on free electrons. So when you cut that off, now the body is struggling because after an oxidative burst, it doesn't have enough free electrons to reduce those remaining radicals, and those radicals will oxidize a healthy tissue, start a fire, oxidation, start a fire, and then it'll manifest as eventually as arthritis or lupus or MS or cancer or you name it, some kind of an inflammation-related health disorder. And if you want to know whether you have an inflammation-related health disorder, you need to know two things. One, if you have pain, you're experiencing inflammation because pain is a manifestation of inflammation. Two, if you can go to Google and type in the word inflammation and your health challenge, whatever it may be, you will find hundreds of papers today, from published papers from medical universities, whatever. The number one cause, it's taken 20 years, but now we know that almost all health disorder is because the immune system is dysfunctioning. The immune system is not proper, and it can't. And so the work that I have done for the last 25 years is put people's feet back on the earth or ground them in living environments and measure and show that the body is a self-healing mechanism and it will heal. Pain, it's just breathtaking how fast the body will heal and recover. It's the story of our time. We have stepped out of nature. We lost our electrical ground, which maintain the electrical stability and the normal electrical functioning of the body. And everything in the body is electrical first. If you have an electrical problem, you have a fire and you have oxidation and manifest as a health disorder or health challenge or however you want to say it. But it's like you can't have, it's like animals in the wild. Cancer doesn't exist in the natural population. However, animals who live indoors with their owners, 50% of them die from cancer, just like their owners. Well, cancer is an inflammation-related health disorder. Go to Google, anywhere. Go to PubMed. Inflammation and your disease, whatever it is, whatever type of cancer it is, whatever it is. So, on the other hand, we all get cancer every day of our lives. Just because of all the multitude of things that are going on in our bodies and the mutants and whatever. But as long as your immune system is healthy, you're protected. That's what the immune system is all about. So what we've done is we have disrupted the electrical stability of the immune system. The immune system no longer has a ground, no longer has this, and it's not just free electrons from the Earth. The Earth has frequencies and it has energies, and
Like
it's
the Schumann resonance type sort of
no,
stuff.
well, that's part of it, but it starts with the sun. I mean, the sun is radiating the Earth. I mean, there's no heat coming from the sun to the Earth, but there's radiation, and as it hits the Earth or the surface of your skin, creates heat. And but that energy that comes from the sun, a lot of it is absorbed on the surface of the Earth, and that's what we call the electrical surface charge of the Earth. And so when you stand on the Earth, or you have a plant that grows on the Earth, or an animal living on the Earth, they absorb and maintain the same amount of energy pro rata as the Earth itself. And the body evolved in that environment, and we disrupted it. And so that starts all these fires. So right now, the world is out there trying to put out all the fires. And this one is because you didn't get enough vitamin C. This one is because you didn't get enough vitamin D. This one is because of whatever. It's, first of all, you got to stop. You got to start at the bottom and work your way up. You have to have electrical stability first. Then everything in the body is autonomic. I mean, it happens naturally. You know, you don't have to think. You don't have to tell the immune system what to do. It knows what to do.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
he's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. Fire of like an inflammation, like the word inflammation, flammable flame. Like I don't know. I never really, it was again hidden in plain sight. Like I never really coupled the two words together. That there's like an energetic fire going on with inflammation, and also because you use the word static and then potential, and then just with the background as an engineer, like I couldn't help but feel like kinetic. There's these different types of energy, and it's almost like like static electricity is electricity that's been left to sort of sit for too long, and yet there's this well sea of potential in the earth, which is yeah, just, allowing things to resettle and reharmonize, but we don't give ourselves permission to reharmonize and we keep floating around more and more static zones. And because we're like inherently kinetic, we're like picking up all this information, but we're not discharging it. And so it's all accumulating as a load that the human body's then taking on. I'm always picturing the human as a conduit, but it's really trippy. Like I picture a whole mindset shift here, which is, like you said, the Earth is the sun is radiating the Earth. There's free electrons everywhere. The Earth is absorbing. It's doing this living, breathing electron transfer thing.
Yeah.
We're
Yep.
walking along. We're meant to be living and breathing and giving the electron transfer back and forward as well.
Right.
And because there's some really interesting stories about like, in indigenous cultures that they'd almost bury people up to their neck as a
Yes.
as a healing technique.
Yeah. Very common. Very common.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, or yeah, it's so interesting.
Well, when we wrote the book Earthing, they were trying to pull all the stories, everything out of me, and so I just kind of went back and tried to reference some of the things that I had experienced when I was young, long before I knew anything about grounding or electrical or anything else. But I remember, a couple of things. One time and I grew up in Montana next to the Cheyenne and the Crow native reservations,
Native
and
American tribes. Yeah, right.
and one time, and they still lived in teepees back in then. And I remember the government came in and was starting to build them houses in the 50s and whatever, but they still kept their teepees. But anyhow, so sometimes after school, I'd go home and with one of my friends and we'd go in the teepee and the mother would say, take those shoes off, they'll make you sick. I had not a clue. I didn't know what she was talking about. But this was when I was really young. And then one time, uh, one of the kids that I knew very well, his sister had contracted scarlet fever. Scarlet fever back in then, most people didn't survive because they didn't have the modern things that we have today, And so anyhow, they'd taken her to the doc and the doc, whatever, I don't know the whole story, but just remember what I saw. They brought her home and there was nothing that the medical community and the doctors could do for her. So they dug a little pit in the ground. I don't know the sizes anymore because I was quite young at the time. But anyhow, so they dug a pit in the ground. They put just a layer of straw in it, not very thick, just a layer of straw. But I know that her body was at Earth, at Earth level or below. And then one of the elders or the grandfathers, they lit a fire, a few feet away, and they just sat there with the girl. And all I remember is a couple, 3 or 4 days went by, and then one day here's this girl up running around like nothing had ever happened. I had no explanation, no understanding, nothing. I didn't know, well, this is great. Everybody's happy now, so life can go on. But yeah, those are two things that I experienced. They triggered a lot of things. And then I remember horses too. They came out with these rubber mats that we put in the horse stalls. And so, it wasn't a month or 2 months later, the vet had to come out and because you started getting arthritis and, the horses were getting all kinds of health problems. And then finally, in order to get them well, you can't afford the vet anymore. You turn them loose in the pasture and then they heal up naturally and normally. But so they were putting a big mat on under the horse rather than a shoe, same kind of a concept, But so all of this just is organic in my background. And I was able to draw on all these things as I grew up and went on through.
What are some of the more remarkable stories that you've heard now that you understand inflammation and you've been supporting people with earthing and grounding? And what are some of the more remarkable stories that you might be able to share with us, or some of the standout ones for you?
Yeah, I don't want to make any claims here, but it's basically, I've been doing this for 27 years now, so I have lots of observations. And I think one of the first ones that I experienced that really cemented me into this path and I stayed the course was I ran across a gentleman who was 76 years old and he was in hospice and he had arthritis. He had the worst arthritis. I didn't know a person could have that much arthritis, but all of the bones were gnarled, the fingers, the joints, and he was just kind of like this. But yet he was an intelligent guy, smart, and so anyhow, a friend of his, he was in hospice at the time. He was under hospice care at the time. So a friend of mine who was a hospice worker, he said, "Would you come over and spend some time and just visit with this gentleman?" He says, "I think you'd like him, and I think he would like to hear what you have to say." So we met, and I told him a little bit about it, and he said, "I would love to try that." And so I made up some material, and that was conductive, and we took it over, and his daughter and a nurse and this other gentleman were with me. It took three of them to get him out of bed so we could remake the bed and put this ground plane in there. And then we covered it back up with the sheet, and then we laid him back in bed, and we had a wire going outdoors, and I connected it to a ground rod because this home that he was in didn't have an electrical ground in the bedroom. So that was all fine, and but anyhow, he called me up maybe 10 days later, and he said, first of all, he wanted to thank me and all that kind of stuff. And he says, "I no longer feel like I have disease in my body," meaning that energetic burn or whatever it was that he was living. And he said, but he said, "I've got a problem." He said, um, "A squirrel ate through my wire, my ground wire, and I'm not grounded anymore." And I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Well, I went out and checked where the wire was, and he said that you could see where the squirrels had eaten through it." And I said, "If you walked outdoors and was able to see that, then I'll come up there and I'll do it this afternoon." And this is in Ojai, California. And so I did. I went up there, and here he was leaning on the door. I mean, he was still gnarled up, all the problems and whatever, but he had energy and he had quiet in his body. As long as he was grounded, he said the fire is out, or he didn't call it fire. He said, "I no longer feel like I have disease." So when you have disease, it means, I don't know what it meant to him, but anyhow, but he lived to be, I think, another 9 years. And he didn't recover fully. I mean, because a lot of that was so damaging, you couldn't recover. I mean, too much. But that was one of the more remarkable things. And then I think the second one that in the early days when I was trying to get some research going, is, all the docs, all the researchers, they said, "We need more information. We want, because we don't understand what you're talking about. We don't believe you know what you're doing." And I said, "Well, that's could be possible." So I went out and I did a study that had about 30 people in it, and no, 60 people. 30 of them were grounded, 30 of them weren't. And we made up little conductive mats that were 12 inches wide by 24 inches long, and I connected it into a wire and connected it into a ground, electrical ground or a ground run outdoors, whatever. And and so in that study, we learned a lot of things in that early study. But one of the main things we learned was we had this one lady who had MS, and her arm, she had to hold it down, and you could tell she was in chronic pain. She was maybe 36 years old, something like that. And I can't imagine what the pain is that they're going through, but I know it's severe. And and so we grounded her for, like, I think 30 days or whatever. And I went back to her house, or I didn't, but I went back to a meeting that they had with a few people there after the study was done. And I didn't recognize her. I couldn't recognize her. And what had happened was that within a couple of days of her being grounded, remember, when you ground somebody, the body's flooding, it's being flooded with free electrons. So only one thing free electrons do is they reduce charge. Inflammation is, like MS, is the immune system oxidizing the myelin sheath and exposing the nerves. And it's out of control because there's no free electrons to prevent that from happening. So MS is one of these modern health disorders that major. And so anyhow, but she looked like 10, 15 years younger. She didn't have full control of her arm, but she didn't have it flailing out here anymore. And I went to visit with her, and she said, "Look at me." She says, I've got my," and she was talking about her beauty. I have my life back. I have my energy back and whatever. And then we validated that study in another study in San Diego when we were doing a test, and another lady similar to her came in, MS, and she was again holding her body such that because of all the pain, and again, a younger woman, probably under 40, and we couldn't put her in that study because they had to be healthy. They couldn't have this kind of a disease. And because she had traveled so far to get there, we went ahead and grounded her, put her in a chair and whatever. And she said she could only sit for 15 minutes because she had to go to the restroom every 30 minutes and so on. So, about an hour went by, hour, 15 minutes, and she changed. Her skin color changed, her everything normalized, whatever. And she was, just being pleasant. And she went into the bathroom and she came out screaming. She says, "Look at me, look at my face. I've got my beauty," or whatever. But so it goes to show you that how important beauty is to women, and how challenging it is when their health gets compromised. But anyhow, so one of the things we learned was the first thing that happens when you ground the body is it normalizes blood viscosity, the thickness of the blood. The little red blood cells, when you get grounded, it absorbs all of these electrons, and you increase the number of electrons on a red blood cell by, there's one, it's a published peer-reviewed study, by a factor of 2.7, 270%. So this is a big deal. And so it's the blood. It's all about the blood. If you normalize the blood, then the blood can get in and out of the capillaries, oxygenate the tissue, get rid of the inflammation or prevent the inflammation, and then the body can function as it's designed in nature.
Yo! Inspired Soul, just taking out a quick sec to ask you, what is your awareness around grounding? What are some of the experiences that you've had around grounding? And I'd love to sort of pick the spiritual conversation around grounding a little bit, because get grounded is something we all, sometimes find ourselves saying, even to ourselves, I got to get grounded. But this is actual grounding, and it's, what's your, any sort of spiritual takeaways in your world? And I'd love to hear your health and wellness takeaways as well. Any profound impacts or stories that you've had of people experiencing benefits from reducing inflammation, reducing pain, and grounding. Leave those in the comments below. I do feel like Clint's going to be back in the future, so if you have any questions of Clint of your own, please also leave them in the comments below, and I may be so blessed, touch wood, to ask them on your behalf. Thanks again. Back to the episode. Clint, how do people go about getting... so... Because I'm sure this sounds incredible. So people want to spend more time in the earth barefoot. Is that ultimately the nature is the prescription?
Well, that's who you are. If you go back, and I tell a story sometimes because most of the groups I talk to are women, but it's like... I know I've done a lot of my genealogy, so I kind of know, some of my history. But when you start looking at your relatives, your progenitors, you can go back so far, sometimes a few hundred years, and you can see. And then one day I was looking at a picture of one of my grandfathers, and I was looking at myself, and he was about 200 or 300 years ago. But the same nose, the same, the features and so on. But anyhow, what I correlated from that was that we all have 10,000 grandmothers or grandfathers, or how got us here, and we are the last manifestation of them. And the immune system that developed in these people is what allows us to be who we are here on the earth
today.
And growing on a ranch and stuff, we grew all of our own vegetables. We did everything ourselves to a large degree until time went on, until the 60s. But we lived in harmony with nature. And I remember my granddad, he was sitting on a rocker one day and something was bothering me. And I don't know what was wrong. But he said, "What's eating you?" Meaning not what are you eating? He said, "What's eating you?" Meaning you're mentally charged up about something and it's making you sick or making you challenged. But that was the mantra back then. It was more about living in harmony with nature. So the bottom line is very simple. 1950, in that time frame, by and large, we disconnected from the earth over a period of a few years. And we started wearing rubber sole shoes and we lost our ground. We lost our primal electrical connection with the earth. It's invisible. You don't see it. But if you have inflammation, you take your shoes off, go stand on the earth. 15 minutes later, you're going to feel it. You won't feel energy moving around here. What you're going to feel is the pain and inflammation drain from your body as the free electrons from the earth come in into your body and absorb and reduce them, reduce the radicals. The immune system is dependent on the body. The immune system, the body never had to, and the medical world never had to think about reducing free radicals because it was automatic. We were grounded. You can't have inflammation in a grounded body. Not possible.
It was grounded, but there was probably less flying around in terms of free radicals as well for our ancestors, right? Like it's a an electrically charged world we live in now that I'm having this conversation with you.
Well, first of all, they didn't have a lot of static electricity.
Exactly.
You had to have had wool and something like that to rub it and then pull it, and you could see some sparks. But wool would be the only thing really back then that would generate static. Gasoline, dynamite, and wool would create charge. But anyhow, the it's we can blame. There's a million things different in our environment that we live in versus our ancestors, versus my grandfather, and we can blame it on and say it's all of these things. But the research that I've done over the last 25 years, 27 years, and it's all available on Earthing Institute.net or PubMed or wherever. You can just go do keyword and find it. But the thing that I found is we like to blame this. First of all, there's a time when, well, it's the water or it's the air or it's, certain sugars or certain this or certain that and whatever. And all of these things evolved. But the problem was everybody kept getting sicker and sicker from the 1960s. And today, the large majority of the population, just like when I started this, it was like 1 in 10,000 children would be diagnosed with autism or something like that. Today in boys, it's 1 in 20, 1 in 30 in girls. And I asked a lot of the researchers along the way, I said, well, when are you going to do something about that? And I hate to say this, but very simple. There's no insurance code. So excuse me, but anyhow, the point there is you can't go and say that, well, it's EMF or it's this or it's that when the immune system is compromised. So these things are not triggering, these things are not causing MS. What's causing MS is the immune system is not being unwound properly.
Yeah.
What's causing cancer is you have a pocket of inflammation. And the inflammation was not resolved naturally like it would have been if you were grounded to the earth. So inside that pocket of inflammation, some cells will de-differentiate, and then one of some number of named cancers will evolve. And then eventually you'll have challenges, and then eventually you'll be diagnosed. And then eventually they'll tell you to change your diet. Excuse me, it's a little late to change your diet. You have to go back and look at the cause. And the cause is the immune system not functioning properly. It's not because you didn't eat enough blueberries. Now, diet is important. Everything is important, but you have to think, we need to think environment. What really changed?
Holistic whole, with the environment.
In the last 60 years, what really changed? Our environment changed. Before 1960, you couldn't get us in the house until television came along. Then we'd go and stay in the house. But other than that, we would rather sleep in the barn because at least you go do something or play in the animals, whatever. But once television came along, then we started spending a little more time in the home. And then in the 1960s, we invented plastics, polymers for the consumer. And then first thing we did is put them on shoes. That made all the sense in the world because now, I mean, earlier shoes were expensive. If they were leather, you had to protect them from getting wet. Otherwise, the water would destroy them. So you'd have to take them off and carry them if it was raining, or you'd have to have galoshes or, you know, some rubber things. But anyhow, so much changed. And then when we put this in 1960, we took those polymers and we carpeted all of the floors with those. You're too young to remember, but old, ugly green and orange and brown shag polyester
Oh, I think I know
carpeting.
what you're referring to. Yeah. Big shag rugs. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we started creating a lot of static electricity, and in our bodies, and then came the significant um, athletic shoe type things. And then we wore them 24/7. The kids would wear them 24/7 because they had a logo. You know, they would sleep in it if you would let them. But then when you went outdoors, you were no longer grounded. You didn't, first of all, we reduced the amount of time that we went outdoors. Then we insulated ourselves further when we did go outdoors. And today, look at the kids in a school. You know, the gym floor, everything is synthetic materials, synthetic carpets, or indoor. Lots of static electricity, lots of charges. But we've lost our ground, and we go work. These kids work up and build up a lot of inflammation in their body, and it's not naturally grounded out and unwound before they go to sleep. And unfortunately, all too many of them wake up with autism a few days later because they created a fever, and there wasn't enough redox potential to reduce that inflammation and so on. But it's serious. So this is not about, because you can't have these health disorders, these modern health disorders. You cannot have them if you were to live outdoors in nature or on the earth. And a lot of our indigenous cultures, if you look at them, they don't live as long as we do. And a lot of it's because of infectious disease. But they do not die from degenerative health disorders. We have all of the creature comforts. So it's a double-edged sword. We've gone too far, like we always do. You know, so we insulated ourselves, cut ourselves off from the energetic connection with the earth. And now our bodies are no longer grounding, so we're floating in free space. It's like we're like an astronaut. What is the first thing that happens to astronauts? They lose, their bones start to dissolve. The reason is because the body has to release calcium from the bone in order to maintain blood pH. Because if the blood pH gets off, then sepsis and you die. So, but it's like osteoporosis. Any woman who has heavy osteoporosis, she hasn't touched the earth in 30 years. And that's all too often today, all too common. Because of it, in our living environments, we don't touch the earth. We don't go out there. But the bottom line of it is that's the curse of the modern world. On one hand, the blessing on the other hand is an opportunity. We can keep all these creature comforts. We can live in this modern world the way we are, but we have to engage manufacturers or people who own and produce shoes, carpeting, flooring, whatever, to build enough conductive carbon in them, just a nickel's worth of carbon, so that they're semi-conductive or conductive enough so that when you go and sit on the couch, you don't build up a static charge when you get up or down. You know, conductive enough that when the kids are out there exercising, and you know, it's why do boys have autism than girls? It's because boys are more rambunctious. They create more inflammation in their bodies. And so on. And it is not just autism, it's the entire spectrum today. I mean, the amount of kids on the spectrum. If you go to the schools, which I do a little bit of work in the schools, I mean, it's just heart-wrenching to see what's going on in the classroom and with the teachers, and it's and you don't hear about it. Nobody seems to care about it, but it's the biggest challenge of our time because that's the next generation. That's who's taking over after we're gone. We have to invest in them, and we have to protect them. But most of all, we have to restore this natural native environment, the native electrical environment that prevents charge and restores the normal functioning of the immune system, which is electrical in nature.
We've been talking about grounding, and the conversation has been very grounded. I would love to just scratch a curiosity itch of my own, which is, what do you think? And you don't have to have an answer for this, but what do you think? Are there like any spiritual consequences of us not being connected to the earth as much as we once were, in your opinion?
Absolutely. You know, when you touch the earth, um, you are electrically connected with every other living thing on the planet. Everything's electrical, everything is connected. We're all systemically connected. We're all related. We're all cousins. I remember the first thing, and again, this because I grew up alone on a ranch, maybe, but I remember that I spent a lot of time in nature. And the first question I ever ask is, I take a blade of grass and I said, how does the grass know to grow? How does the wind know to blow? What is all of this? Because it's just phenomenal. But there's something, and I don't know how to put it in words sometimes, but there's a knowingness, and I learned this primarily from Native American. Um, you're just quiet, and there's this synergy that it's global. And when we're all electric, and it's electrical in nature, everything's electrical. But when we're not connected to this energy or this consciousness, this whatever it is, then we go crazy. I mean, we lose our ground, we lose our balance, we lose everything. But when you touch the earth, I mean, it's like, and I try to, especially with women and moms, um, they have to ground out the stress of the day. You have to go out, put your feet on the earth and reconnect with nature and just let Mother Nature uh, discharge your body. At the same time, recharge and I said, how many times have you ever seen anybody go outdoors, sitting on the grass, a little bit of shade and sunshine or whatever, and be unhappy? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. As soon as you ground yourself, the body releases all of that stored energy and you equalize with the earth, and then everything in the body begins to stabilize and return to normal. Damage that has been done sometimes can take weeks, months to totally recover. But as far as taking the charge, it's like my granddad was telling me, what's he eating you? Most people, their health challenges, and what's creating all this inflammation on the body? It's anger and mad and all this nutty stuff that goes on in our lives, and it's fed by TV and screens and chaos. But there's another place. A lot of people meditate, a lot of people do various things, but you need to find a little window or place or space where you can disconnect from that, but you have to be touching the earth and reabsorb and reconnect with your roots and every other living thing on the planet, which you are related to. And there's a harmony and an energy, and you can call it spiritual, you can call it whatever you want, but it's just it's you can't put it in words, but you know what it is when you're there, because you don't need to think. Things work. Everything. There's a synergy here.
Yeah.
A knowingness.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really interesting because in the week coming into your episode, I've obviously been diving deeper into your work, and I've got quite a robust meditation practice, touch wood. But it's starting to get into summer, so I've taken the time to meditate, but instead of just sitting there cross-legged, I've sort of been sitting both palms down, like, and then both feet flat on the grass on a bit of an incline in the front yard. And it's been interesting because, well, just to rewind back a couple of steps, what I've noticed is as a culture, we're very much obsessed with this doing nature of ours rather than this being nature of ours, if that makes sense. It's like, hey, I'm Amrit. And then it's like, oh, sorry, what's your name? Amrit. What do you do? It's like, what do I mean? What do I do? What am I being? You know? So it's very much this masculine kind of, what do you do? It's like not. So without getting too philosophical about that, one of the things that I've been sort of working with for some time now is taking the time to just be, like, do nothing, you know, and it actually sounds a lot harder than it is given the modern neuroses of today's society. So I'll just sort of take the time to just sit there, and I'd sort of watch like all these thoughts come in, which is like, and my wife first addressed this to me because she's like, you know, you love doing stuff. And I was like, yeah, you know, I like getting around, like cleaning the garage, doing a bit of this, doing a bit of that. And she said, yeah, but what about just doing nothing? And I was like, no, I do nothing for extended periods of time. I meditate. She's like, you're still doing something in that moment. You're meditating. And I was like, damn it, you caught me out. It's like I'm totally am
That's
doing
true.
something.
Yeah.
And what I
Yeah.
noticed, Clint, is this last week, after my meditations with my pads, as you call them, my hands and my feet flat on the earth, just sitting there, I noticed coming out of the meditation in that state, I was actually cool to just chill for a bit. Like, not that I'm normally rushing out of my meditation, like but I'm off to the next thing. But I was actually fascinated to just sit there, not be driven by a bunch of thoughts, and just be like, you know what? That's grass, and I'm just staring at the grass, or there's some twigs, or there's a branch, and I'm just like, I felt connected and present, but it was this, there was a grace about it that I can't really describe in words. And maybe that's the
Yeah.
knowingness that you're describing there. But it's
Well,
yeah, it's left a profound impact on me for sure, because I also noticed, just a downwind from there, it wasn't just a momentary thing. I carried that level of calm, and you can argue that part of it's connected to the meditation for sure, but I've been carrying that level of calm throughout the day. And I think the conscious awareness of, oh, I did get to discharge also helps, because I'm feeling better as I'm moving about when I am finally moving about from there.
you have to find things that people can relate to and understand in order for them to make sense of it. But it's like sometimes when you're driving down the road and you have your radio on, and the radio signal stays there with you, and it stays for longer than you ever believed that it could have or should have. And then all of a sudden you change the channel and you lose it, but you can't go back to it. So when you uh, electrically, I'm going to use a better word, couple, when you touch the earth, then your body is electrical, the earth is electrical. So you're going to couple with the earth, and then you're going to resonate. You're going to be humming and singing with, you know, you can't understand the words, you can't understand the music or anything, but there's rhythms and paces, and uh, everything in your body dances to the rhythms of the earth, the rhythms of the universe. And you have to somehow find a way to take yourself out of this modern world, and just so you can go stage right and hear and contemplate and try to make sense of who we are and how we got here. And it's not about what your mission is. You just need to be. And because you are part of something, you are not, I mean, I am not, let's put it that way. I am not who I think I am. You know, I created grounding. I did nothing of the like. I was just in the right place at the right time and had the right whatever that the universe or this synergy could make use of me, or my knowledge or whatever, to help bring about something that is of needed or beneficial somewhere. But we're all in this together. We're all part of this. It's not about me or you or I or, you know, greatness. I mean, it's about being in tune with um, consciousness, I guess, of universal consciousness, and our family, of our human family. And not just our human family, but our, you know, the animal world. I mean, the animal world's simple. they live in the moment, and they want to be happy. So anyway, it's again, I don't have the words. But there's a language out there that I can only resonate with. I can't speak it. I can't dance to it so much, but I just need to be and let my body do its magic, or let nature. It's like we are nature up walking around. We are the earth up walking around. We come from the earth. We live, eat, breathe, dance with the earth, and we go back to the earth, and it's just the way it is. And you got to. A lot of people are, pull back from that and say, "Oh my goodness," but that's the magic. That's the power. That's the wow. That's what it's all about. It's not about the latest shiny pair of shoes or whatever.
Isn't it? It's like fascinating. In the word human being, humus means of the earth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, but we are we are one with everything that's on this planet. We need to look at it that way and care of everything on this planet we can.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. I know you said you're not special. And at the risk of gassing you up, one of the incredible gentlemen I've also had on this podcast, I'm not sure if you've come across the work of a gentleman named Stephen Jenkinson. He wrote a book called Die Wise. And it's an incredible read. I recommend it to everybody to read when they're ready at some point in their life. I recommend sooner rather than later because but nonetheless. And we had him on the podcast a couple of times, and one of them, he talked deeply about elderhood, custodianship, stewardship, and things like this. And he said there was a very simple diagnostic test to understand whether someone became an elder. So backing up a little bit, he said everyone grows older, but they don't necessarily by rite of passage just become an elder. You've got olders and you've got elders. And the diagnostics are a very simple two question and answer test, which is the first one goes, what did you know? And the second question is, what did you do about it?
Yeah, that's true.
And
Yeah.
I found that quite profound because I think that doesn't rule anybody out from eldership. Actually, it's very subjective to the mentee in many ways as well, right? But I have to say that listening to, you shared, it's like, yeah, I was just in the right place at the right time, doing the right things in my life story. But it could have been just as easy for you to not, like, you've got earthing.com, you know, you notice that there was like a lack of adherence to people actually, like even after this conversation, people absorb it, understand the importance of sticking their feet in the earth. They're probably not going to change their lifestyle drastically too much. But
No.
you went away, created sheets for your bed, mats for your bed, because people are going to sleep whether they like it or not, right? And so now
Right.
you found ways to actually help people in
Yeah.
and around their lifestyle. Earthing.com has a bunch of things that we can, even I saw a really cool pair of gray shoes that I've just ordered actually.
Yeah, cool. It's like earthing.com, uh, first of all, my background is communications and a whole different world. I've never sold anything in my life. I never made any product in my life that I ever wanted to sell. The only thing that happened with earthing.com is when we were doing our studies, we had to build ground planes, and the first ones were very simple. You borrowed things from the electrostatic discharge industry and various other EKG and medical industry, whatever. And we just took simple things that were conductive that we understood, and then we had to make ground planes or things that were grounded so somebody could stand on it, sit on it, walk on it, with EKG or whatever, so we could monitor, measure, feedback, get feedback, biofeedback, or whatever. But we did like 30 studies by now, and but anyhow, along the way, we had to create these ways of grounding people. And then we needed to figure out, because people move around. You can't just go ground somebody because they're in motion. So we had to ground them long enough that we could measure certain effects, beneficial effects of grounding. And sometimes it was 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes 90 days. And but in this process, all the people who were grounded every single time, they wanted to be able to keep their grounding mat, or the subjects in those studies wanted to be able to keep the mats because they felt pain relief, or they felt better, or they felt calmer, they felt all these things. And then they would come back as little time went on, and they would want one for their mother or their grandmother or someone, and so it accidentally turned into a business over a period of about 3 or 4 years. And then we had to start ordering in a little bit more and make up things. And we made dozens of different kinds of ground planes, but most of them didn't really work very long, and they were rather expensive, and and it's just challenging. So eventually but we decided what was the one thing that we could do to ground people so they could just go home, because we knew that if they had to do something every day, it would only be a matter of days and they would drop off. So we said, what can we do so there's no work? So we ended up creating a mat for the bed, or ground sheets or whatever. And then all they had to do is take it home, put it on your bed one time on your sheet. That's the carbon ones. Those are the best ones. And then all you have to do every day is the same thing. You come home, lay down, go to sleep, just like you always do. You don't have to do anything. And nature does the rest. And it's automatic, and it's that's the way it's supposed. So that earthing is an accidental business as far as the products. But today we have over 200 different companies selling earthing products on Amazon and earthing.com. We do all the work, we do whatever, but around the world. But it was a year ago this month, there was an article in Wall Street Journal front page, and and it was about 670 million people researched TikTok to find out information about earthing and grounding. 670 million people. Now that was not a real US audience. That was a worldwide audience. So it goes to show that, I just get up every morning and I keep doing research, and I keep grounding a school here or a teacher there or somebody. I just keep doing it every day. Because it's in me. If I didn't do it, I'd go crazy, because But what's happened is, and I have to thank all the competition, because even though most of their product is not really effective or kind of crazy, and it's mostly from China, and I don't have any problem with that. It's just that I wish that somebody would educate a little more than they do. But anyhow, the point is, they've educated billions of people about earthing and grounding around the world, and they're not buying earthing products necessarily. Some are, thank you, uh, because it helps fund everything we do. But but the point is, eventually, this has to become a real business. All the products have to have high integrity, high functionality, because when people's health is compromised, they need real products, not something you go to buy on Amazon for $29. You need something that's really going to work and really solve your problem. Because we're talking about serious health disorders and chronic inflammation, and the list goes on. There's 100 chronic inflammation related health disorders. There's more, but there's that many that everybody knows. And but anyhow, so it's a real opportunity here. It's not about I'm 80 over 80. I'm on my way out. So it doesn't matter whether I make any money or not. What matters is that we educate a universe of people. And of those people, there's going to be a dozen or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 that are going to step up and say, I want to be part of this. And whether it's just engineering new material, new fabrics that have enough conductive in them that they can make couches or mattresses or this, or whether it's conductive for shoes to take up now, come on, and all of the other things. So and flooring, the floors have to be, you have to put some conductive. Right now we're all living on plastic floors. That's crazy, man. But they can take those planks that they put in all the homes and remodel them with it. They can put a very thin layer of carbon, and all these problems can be fixed. But that is the next opportunity. You have AI, you have, I've seen it all come and go, and we haven't seen anything yet. I can tell you, if you can take just any piece of what I've seen in the last 60 years and look forward even 30 years, you are not going to recognize anything, because everything is going to change. And it's all okay, but there's a balance in there. You have to look at health along the way here. You have to restore this biological carbon unit here and integrate it with modern technology, and especially our children and our youngsters. The older people, that was a mistake I made. I spent too many years, because I was 50 some when I started this, and while everybody's 60, 70, 80, they were all in terrible health. And so we grounded a lot of them, but I knew, because of my background in the communication and television, and I knew I should have been starting in kindergarten, because those people, you educate them, they go with it. Nobody recognizes grounding more than a child.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so the next generation needs to focus. That's why I work right now primarily only with teachers, only with people who take care of younger people, because the rest of it doesn't matter. Everybody else is going to eventually get grounded, whether they like it or not.
Touche, touch wood. If Last question, if everyone universally practiced grounding, how do you think that would transform humanity? What would that look like? What would the collective look like if everybody was on to grounding?
Well, I think, it starts with the family. If you have illness in a family, health challenges, it's like if there's autism in a family, then mom gets to automatically go to jail. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. You are going to be in jail for 20 years or longer. And it destroys the family. But it's the same with any amount of other health disorders. But our children, that's number one. But the most important person out there is the mom, because she's the one who takes care of the health of her mother, her daughters, her children, her husband, and so on. And so so that's where I have spent most of my time working with women 35 to 60. And it's the 50-year-old, 55-year-old that is the most aggressive about getting everything out there. And they have the disposable income. The kids are gone, so they can do it. And 99% of our business is female. And it's just helping these moms take care of each other. It's not about making money because you couldn't sell this if you wanted to. You have to share it and let other people share it because you can't buy enough TV advertising to try to explain grounding.
Mhm.
It's like I was at a meeting the other day, and there's like 30 women in a group, and I asked them, or somebody raised a hand and said, because I was talking about inflammation. A young girl raised her hand. She said, "What is inflammation?" And I said, "Wait a minute, something's wrong here. This woman is in her 30s and she doesn't know." And then I asked everybody, I said, "How many of you know what inflammation is?" There was only one person in that group that knew what inflammation was. That is scary to me because I've been talking about inflammation. I mean, I'm way over everybody's head in all too many times, and especially for women, because women are about feeling. They feel things, they know things. There's a knowingness there that men aren't aware of, and they're aware of, but they've blocked it out with whatever. But anyhow, but to go on, it's really moms and the children. And then if you can fix that, then you can fix the world. Because men when they go crazy, they go drop bombs on each other. They go do dumbass things, destroy economies, destroy populations. I mean, this is insane. We need to take all that energy and talent and put it to work building a better world or building a better living environments or whatever. I don't have all the answers, but I know that it's not. We have been fighting wars for 5,000 years, and that's just anger and innate ego and all of these things and power. That's not what life's about. Look at the animal world. And a lot of this does take place in the animal world, and to create survival of the fittest, and all of that's necessary. But with all of the intelligence we have and all the knowledge we have, certainly we can create environments that produce fit, healthy people and families. But most of all, families. It's about the family. If you destroy the family, it doesn't matter about anything else. Once the family's gone, then everything is gone. And we see that in the US today. This place is chaos. And it's not that it's good or bad or right or wrong. It doesn't matter. It's just chaos. And we need to find a way to everybody to. It's not about money. It is about money, but it's not about money. It's not about all these things that it's like, everybody is in love with this money and things and power and whatever. It's not. It's about people. We need to be in love with people and take care of people.
Clint.
I'm done.
You mentioned you just can't buy enough TV advertising time to really explain some of this stuff. I am absolutely honored. Thank you so much for sharing yourself and your insights so abundantly here with us today on the podcast. My goodness, I just so grateful, and not just grateful for your time and energy here today, which absolutely I am. And also we'll put links to earthing.com and everything in the show notes below. I think the team even found that, I think there's a code or something, but we'll put all that in it below. But one of the things I will say is, you can tell from back to that elderhood conversation, this is your life's work, like having gone from, the ranch and then into telecommunications and then, sort of bridging the two together and bringing this awareness and the potency of this work. And like you said, almost 700,000 search queries going around just on TikTok alone around the world on this subject. I'm grateful for you, Clint. Thank you so much for what you're embodying, what you're carrying, what you're sharing with such grace and love for us to be better people to each other, for ourselves. Thank you so much, Clint. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really, this is what makes me light up and go, keeps me going. So for sure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Health is a birthright. It's natural. It's nature. If you don't have help, then you're doing you, nobody else. You are, well, it's our environment, but you have to take responsibility yourself, because if you have pain in your body, you created it because of the environment that you're in, or the environment that you mentally have created, whatever, you know. Yeah, it's wild. Any amount of grounding is good. But in nature, you'd grounded 24/7, and you could never have any of these modern health disorders. And if you do have, and the body has a wonderful 911. It's called pain.
Yeah.
If you have any pain in your body whatsoever, that means you have inflammation in your body. Unless you've broken an arm, and then the high Vicodin pain, that burning pain, that's related to not being grounded, because in the animal world, they don't have that hot burning pain because the electrons reduce the radicals that are oxidizing that tissue and create that burning pain. You have a dull pain, but you don't have that oxidative pain. But anyhow, but no, it's like if your health is compromised, very compromised, then put a patch on it and leave it there until you get well. Get grounded and stay grounded until your body returns to normal, because the body is a self-healing mechanism. All you have to do is give it what it needs, and it'll take care of the rest. You don't need to know anything about it. You just need go sit on a rock in nature and watch the animals, watch what they do, and it's all the same thing. I mean, it's just health is nature is.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Get out of our own way is what I'm hearing is a large part of it.
Tune in, just clear your mind and ask the question: why am I sick? What am I eating? You know, what is going on here? But it always go look at the poorest people in the world. How come there are so many of them? And the health disorders they have. I mean, the average age is the average age. If you don't have nutrition and whatever, it's probably in the 40s and 50s, which it was in the 1960 era here, or 1950 era here in the US. The average man was 60 years old, Now it's 80 years old, I think. And a lot of that is nutrition, but this degenerative health disorders, the one that creates the mom is the autism, the lupus, the MS, the breast cancers, the fibromyalgias, and all of those inflammation-related immune system disorders. It's all lifestyle, and there's no one answer, except that if you have pain in your body, that's a message to get grounded from your brain. Say, okay, we're on fire, something's wrong. Let's put the fire out. And the only way you can put the fire out is you have to ground or reduce those radicals and via grounding, one way or another. You can take you can eat certain foods, they'll help. And the better your diet is, the less inflammation. But the real problem is in the mind, the mental, because it's the chronically elevated fight or flight, chronic elevated cortisol in the body that really is the main underlying contributor, promoter of this inflammation. The fact that you're not grounded allows it to manifest, but it's like an animal in the wild. He gets chased. His life is threatened every day, but all he does is get ground out the stress and goes back to eating like nothing ever happened. Women internalize it, and that internalization causes more inflammation, more pain, more stress, and then manifest as a disaster. I try to get everybody, just go to the park, take your shoes off, and stay there long enough and notice the changes in your body. And if it's really good, get in the habit of doing that. Worst case, at night when you come home, get a chair, take it out in the backyard, take your shoes off, put your feet on the earth or the concrete on the deck, whatever, because concrete is grounding, and let the earth suck this, what I call coyote juice, because, or the stress out of your body.
Cortisol.
Because we're all being, cortisol out of your body. The inflammation is created from the cortisol.
Woo! Inspired soul, you made it through to the end of another episode. Thank you so much for your inspired blessings, your inspirations to evolve to a whole nother level. Man, it is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. Now, just reminding you guys that everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. Thank you all, to all of you that are subscribed to the channel. I cannot believe we're at 100,000, like 100,000. That is a massive milestone. Thank you all for your incredible love and support. Seriously, it is such a gift and a blessing. Now, to all of you that haven't yet subscribed, just inviting you to take a moment. As I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is a subscribe button. It's lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please take a moment, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. Like I said, it helps with everything we're doing here, championing love, positivity, and wisdom around the world. Now, if you love this episode with Clint, you're also going to love the incredible work of Dr. Julia Ross. She talks about 5 key amino acids that are at the heart of all the challenges, all the mental neuroses, and all mood disorders. It's really incredible. Just 5 really affordable amino acids that can revolutionize your mindset, your mind, the space in your mind, the way you occupy the world. Revolutionary. One of the best episodes received on our channel. So I'm just going to put a link to that on screen now, and also on screen another couple of episodes for you to dive in even deeper to keep your inspirations flowing for your evolution onwards, upwards, and inwards. Go on, take your pick, make your click, and I'll see you in the next one.